Good morning, friends. I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. And today I'm going to bring you our lumbar spine sunrise yin practice. So this is a part of the body that tends to give people fits, right? It's an area of really chronic pain and discomfort for a lot of people. And what I find in my practice and with my back care, this has also been a struggle for me in my life, is the structural issues that can cause lower back pain. When we apply a skillful yoga practice, we can work on correcting over time. But the soft tissue dysfunctions that cause lower back pain, sometimes a single practice can make a difference in comfort and care. So I would encourage you, attend to the shapes that you do today in the practice. Notice which ones give you some sense of relief, and feel free to cherry pick these. There's no reason that you have to do a full 60-minute yin practice every time you have lower back pain. If you find 2 or 3 movements that work, that help you bring you comfort and relief from your symptoms, feel free to add those to your daily self-care routine. Now, what you'll need to be safe and to enjoy your practice today, I recommend a yoga mat, although if you don't have a mat, a carpeted surface would be just fine. I'd like you to have a bolster. If you don't have a bolster, you could use pillows, but look for something on the firm end. So I would rather see you use something like, say, a couch cushion than I would, say, a pillow. I'd like you to have 2 yoga blocks and at least 1 blanket. I would prefer if you have 2 blankets. The nice thing about me cueing you for a blanket as a prop is all of us have this prop in our house. I know that we do. And we'll get started here with sunrise yin in just a moment. This constructive rest position, it's a passive reset for the iliopsoas. So come down onto your back, place the soles of your feet on the mat, but take your feet out wide. If it's okay for your hips, full mat width apart, and then let the knees draw in together to rest upon one another. Now, for some bodies, this may not feel good either for the hips or the hip flexor, like the rectus femoris in particular. If that's you, take a block at the lowest width, place it in between your knees, and you can get the same effect. And you can do anything that you like with your hands here. And the reading for today will be from chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita. And we hear from both our protagonist, Arjuna, but also his teacher and mentor, Krishna. So chapter 8 is absolute freedom. Arjuna said, what is this absolute freedom, Krishna? What is the self? What is the true nature of action, the nature of beings and of gods? Teach me the way of worship, what it is here in the body, and how at the hour of death can a man be with you in spirit. The blessed Lord said, freedom is union with the deathless. The self is the essence of all things. Its creative power called action causes the whole world to be. About beings, know that they die. About gods, know the supreme person and know that true worship is I myself here in this body. Whoever in his final moments thinks of me only is sure to enter my state of being once his body is dead. Whatever the state of being that a man may focus upon at the end, when he leaves his body, to that state of being he will go. Therefore, Arjuna, meditate on me at all times and fight with your whole mind intent on me. You will come to me, never doubt it. Strong in the practice of yoga with a mind that is rooted in me and in nothing else, you will reach the supreme person that I am. Meditate on the guide, giver of all, the primordial poet, smaller than an atom, unthinkable, brilliant as the sun. If you do this at the hour of your death with an unmoving mind, drawing your breath up between your eyebrows, you will reach the person that I am. I will teach you about the state called the eternal, the absolute, which those who strive toward me enter, desireless, free from attachments. Closing the 9 gates of the body, keeping the attention in the heart, drawing the breath to the forehead, and with the mind absorbed, one pointed, uttering the sacred Om, which itself is freedom. Focused on me as you leave the body, you attain the ultimate goal. For men whose minds are forever focused on me, whose love has grown deep through meditation, I am easy to reach, Arjuna. Now we're going to move into our first true yin shape of the practice, although I consider this constructive rest position to be a yin pose as well. It can be yin in nature. Come onto your back. Lengthen out, reach your arms all the way up over your head. Press the heels of your feet forward past the back edge of your mat, and then walk both legs off to the right. Maybe just until the point where that left hip point starts to lift up. That's probably plenty. And then start to walk your hands off to the right as well. And once again, when you've got the hands over to the right to the point where that right shoulder starts to lift up, unless you're not getting the level of sensation that you need along the left side of your body, you're not in that threshold between discomfort and pain, that range of 4 to 6 on our continuum from 0 to 10, that's probably good for now. So lower back pain, it just plagues people. It plagues people. And like we have these acute injuries sometimes, but much of the time, the pain is more chronic in nature, right? And it comes from movement patterns. So we're going to work on trying to correct some of that from a soft tissue standpoint today. What I feel like I've learned in my own practice of my own back hair journey is over time, with consistency in the application of thoughtful practice, we can start to make some corrections to address some of the structural causes of low back pain. But the soft tissue causes, the soft tissue culprits, sometimes even a single session or a single movement, if we do it skillfully, can make a big difference. Right? And then when we use those small, impactful movements consistently, I feel like we can a lot of times correct dysfunctions in the musculature and even correct the movement patterns with a lot of thought and care in a way that helps it to live and move with a lot more comfort and a lot more power. Right, keeping the eye on the prize of knowing that the goal here is finding length along the left side of your body from the pinky edge blade of your left foot to the tip of your left pinky finger. Check in, notice the level of sensation that you have right here. And again, if you're in that threshold between discomfort and pain, you're already home. Don't change anything. If you've opened up some space in your body once more, you can walk your hands more over to the right, your feet over to the right. You could even cross your left ankle over your right, or take maybe the middle finger and thumb of your right hand, wrap them around your left wrist, and drag that left arm further over to the right. So I feel like there are 4 really primary soft tissue culprits that are associated with lower back pain. And I think 2 really lend themselves to us working on developing and lengthening out through yin. So we're going to focus on those today. The quadratus lamborum and the iliopsoas. But I also, like, one thing that I'd like you to think about, and you may be already there, you may be years ahead of me here. Sometimes I feel like people get really confused. We as people get really confused between making the distinction between I have this dysfunctional movement pattern, or I have a dysfunction in the musculature that's causing me pain, and my quality as a human being. Right? And I'll tell you more about that when we get to the other side. Start to release your left wrist, release your left ankle, come back to center, find a full body stretch. Noticing the difference in the state of the tissues from one side of your body to the other. And then walk your feet off to the left. Walk your arms off to the left as well, just to the point where you feel maybe a little slight lift in the right hip and the right shoulder. Right, so the big theme when we're noticing things with ourselves, including maybe noticing that we have some dysfunction in our body, is can we practice that noticing coming from a place of curiosity and kindness? Right, that's constructive. Isn't that interesting? I always slouch off to the side when I'm sitting. Right, that we can do something about. But when it's abusive of self, it's really hard. I feel like it really complicates, it derails us from trying to make a positive, constructive change in a way that's really healthy. But I also think it's important to recognize, again, this distinction. Like, I think it's very possible for somebody to be almost saint-like, kind to themselves, kind to other people, making positive impact in the world, doing everything they know to do to be a good person, and have very dysfunctional musculature and movement patterns that causes pain. And it's also possible for us to have like super pliable hips, back, hamstring, really healthy movement patterns in musculature, and be a douchebag. Right? And it's not that if we find times where we're not the type of person that we want to be, that we can make corrections, but just notice if it's with the musculature, that's like relative to trying to fix a personality issue, which like over time I found a number of things that needed some work in my body. Isn't that interesting? Right? Noticing it with curiosity and kind, not my body, but my personality. But it's a much bigger effort and it requires a lot more outside help. Like in my case, usually the work of a therapist or someone I can really trust to bounce things off of. All right, friends, if your body wants more sensation, cross your right ankle over your left. Take a little grip on your right wrist with your left hand, drop further over to your left. So again, we're going to really focus primarily on two soft tissue culprits, the quadratus lumborum and the iliopsoas. So I'm going to tell you a bit about the anatomy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the energetics through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine. And then in the movements that we do today, I'll talk specifically about what they're doing and how you might replicate it. But you'll also I think you'll be able to feel in a lot of these cases too. Right, so forgive me if I mentioned this earlier, but know that if you find some specific tools that give you some kind of comfort, temporary or longer term comfort, relief from low back pain symptoms, know that you can cherry pick. It doesn't have to look like a full yoga practice. Right, there's not a reason in the world why you couldn't take one or two things and do them on your living room carpet in the morning while you're watching the news and drinking coffee. Right, I think that's a really healthy way to have a home yoga practice. All right, friends, release your right wrist, release your right ankle, come back into center, take a full body stretch, and then roll over onto your belly. And we're going to find Sphinx pose. So float your shoulders over your elbows, lengthen your legs out long, and then relax the legs so that everything from your tailbone down to the tips of your toes is completely relaxed. Ankles roll to the inside or the outside with ease. If you can, grab a block, place a block in between your wrists, maybe at the highest height for now. Soften your belly, soften your lower back, maybe release your forehead down to the block. Right, the gripping here for me, I don't know where it happens for you. For me, when I experience gripping here, almost always it's in my glutes, in my seat, or it's in my belly.
right? And of the two, the one that's going to be the most disruptive of what we're trying to do is in the belly. So over and over again, if you would, drop your attention into your belly and just think soften, soften, soften. All right, so what's your level of sensation right now? And that sensation, like, be fairly strategic with this. Where are you feeling it? Maybe a pulling and opening sensation on the front plane of your body from your groin all the way up to your sternum. Or maybe it's compression in your lower back. Check and notice what you have going on. And depending on that, you might choose to stay right here. You might even choose to lower down. To lower down, what I would do is take my elbows a little further out to the side. This is if you're getting like too much compression in the low back. But the other option to add sensation, turn your hands palms facing down, press into the heels of your hands until your elbows lift, and then maybe even walk the heels of your hands back and towards your waist. Soften your glutes again, soften your belly. Maybe soften the neck and the forehead. Let the forehead gently drape down toward the earth. So what I would like to do with this shape is, if I can, is start to do some gentle lengthening of the iliopsoas. Right, and we're going to take a much more, I won't say aggressive, proactive approach toward that in the next pose. And I'll tell you a lot more about the psoas. What are the qualities of the tissues in your belly right now? Are they rigid and firm? Or are they soft? And whatever you notice, isn't that interesting? And then if they're rigid, can you soften there a little bit more? Right, so if you lift it up onto the heels of your hands, drop your forearms back down to your mat. You can lower your heart down to the earth. And then press yourself up into a tabletop shape. Grab two blocks. And in this tabletop shape, we're going to move into dragon pose. So step your right leg forward to the outside of your right hand. Bring the blocks under your hands, maybe at the highest height for now. Now tuck the toes up under your left foot. Walk that left knee further back behind you. And then relax that left leg. Right, so like in a different context, I might tell you to engage that left glute, but that's really not what I'm looking for here. So find softness there. Find softness in your hips as they start to drape down toward that right heel. And feel a sense of opening from the inside of your left knee up into your groin, and then maybe all the way up into your belly, all the way up to the sternum or even the throat. So the iliopsoas, it's made up of two muscles. Psoas major and the iliacus, right? But usually these are combined and collectively just referred to as psoas. So that's how I'm going to use it here. Right, so this muscle, it's foundationally important to human movement, and it's a significant muscle. So like if you're a meat eater and you've eaten like a tenderloin, right, that's the psoas of whatever animal that came from. So foundationally important to human movement, our ability to sit and stand erect, to have good posture. Psoas is responsible for that. Our ability to walk and to run, the action of lifting the knee in the general direction of the chin.
largely due to the psoas. There are other supporting muscles. And so it's really important. And it attaches to the bottom of the diaphragm, all 5 vertebrae of the lumbar spine, and then it wraps down around the pelvis and it attaches to the lesser trochanter, the top of the femur. And our societal movement patterns, because we spend so much time sitting at desks or sitting in vehicles driving or sitting on the couch watching Netflix, no judgment, I love Netflix, tends to get short. But it also tends to shorten from chronic sympathetic nervous system engagement, fight or flight nervous system engagement. Friends, start to draw that left hip back behind you, press into the heel of the right foot. Create some slack so you can unwind that right leg. Ooh, come back into tabletop, and then right away, step your left foot forward. Bring your hands onto blocks, maybe at the highest setting. Maybe tuck your toes under your right foot, walk that right knee back behind you, and now softness in that whole right leg. And there'll be some engagement here required in the hands, but notice if this looks manifest as gripping or drawing your shoulders up, and see if you can soften there and relax. So from the way that I described that anatomy, you might imagine with that psoas is chronically engaged and it gets locked short, it starts to draw those 5 lumbar spine vertebrae short on the front end of the spine, which opens them wide on the back end of the spine. And if you know someone who has herniated discs and you've ever seen an image, right, this is a pathway that we're creating that facilitates disc herniation, right? But it also hurts. It's not a good orientation for the body. It's uncomfortable. So taking some time to intentionally lengthen out the psoas. We're using one tool right here that's really pretty specific for the psoas, but we'll do some others as well today. Now, energetically, through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine, the psoas has a really specific association with kidney meridian, which is water element. The secondary channels of kidney meridian have a big association with a significant muscle, right? And water element, as kidney meridian in particular, the acquired emotion with which this is best known or associated is fear. So if you think about the embodied sensation of fear is that gripping or that clenching in the belly, that's the physical engagement of the psoas. So when we're in a sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight nervous system response, the psoas engages. Right, so 2 things. One, that's healthy, right? We need that sympathetic nervous system response. It was what I think of as the saber-toothed tiger is attacking me moments. We need that sympathetic nervous system response in order to survive those moments. But our nervous system doesn't understand the difference between the saber-toothed tiger or I said something stupid to my friend and I'm worried that I hurt her feelings and that she's upset with me, right? The nervous system responds to these 2 stimuli in the same way. So a lot when we're wired for anxiety, as a lot of people are, I'm one of those people. It can make it really hard for the nervous system to distinguish, and over time, that psoas is chronically engaged. And a lot of people believe that people with a chronically engaged psoas are more predisposed to identify with and take on that irrational, I said something dumb to my best friend and I'm worried about what she's thinking about me fears. Right? But I also have come to believe that we can also reverse engineer, and when we have these emotional components that are difficult for us, we can and should be working on these in our emotional landscape through therapy or journaling or other disciplines like that. But we can also reverse engineer them if we can address the physical symptoms. We can help soften the emotional component as well. All right, start pressing into your left heel, draw your right hip back, hip point back behind you. Great job. Oof. grab a blanket, and we're going to go into snake and wrap. So maybe start with a half folded blanket and then fold it into a quarter and an eighth. And then if you know the width of your roll, this is a good starting point. I like a little bit more narrow. The more narrow we go before we start the roll, the more sensation you'll get. And if you have a wider belly roll, if you imagine this is our little imaginary can of peanuts that we just created with this roll, you want the top and the bottom of the can to open up toward the hip points. But if it's more narrow, I find I get better sensation if the top and bottom open toward my chin and my toes. Now lay this on your mat, place your belly button right about in the middle of that blanket, and then find a forearm plank. Right, and this may be plenty, right? Soften your belly. Know that feeling your pulse in your belly here is very, very normal. And then if you have more space and opening, you can flatten your feet out on the mat. And if you have even more space and your body wants more sensation, you can go full on skydiver. And just fold your arms out to the side. Release the whole weight of your body down onto this blanket so the blanket presses up into your abdominal cavity firmly. And so we started with a constructive rest position, which was a passive psoas release. This is also a passive psoas release, but it's a lot more aggressive. But it's also a much quicker way to make a difference in these tissues. But the key here for me, like it may be different in your body. When I'm engaging muscles here in a way that's preventing me from getting the outcome I want, it's the glute, it's the belly. Again, same as Sphinx. So can you notice the engagement in the glutes? Notice the engagement in your core. Isn't that interesting? And then from that platform of curiosity and kindness, maybe choose to flatten out a little bit more, soften a little bit more. Right, so when we start to self-identify these patterns, like I tend to hold a lot of fear, like I think there's so many benefits from the noticing and then trying to figure out how to address it. Right, so I don't know what your experience is with decision making when you're scared, when you feel fearful. My track record is really poor, like it's really bad, you guys. And very often the decisions that I make when I'm frightened are just really bad decisions. Right, and you don't have to do anything more than watch the news to know that when societies are fearful, but there's a lot of collective fear in the society, and the societies are making decisions, the decisions are tragic and horrific. So if we can help address that in ourselves, even starting in a really small way, I think the impact that spirals into the world is really significant. It makes a difference.
right, friends, come back to your forearm plank. Oof. And then lift yourself up, remove your blanket.
Come back to all fours, come back to tabletop, grab your bolster. And then I would like you to, I'll invite you to sit down onto your right hip. Bring your right shin parallel to the top edge of your mat. Have a block close by too, if you would. And then put a big, generous bend in your left knee so your left shin is parallel with the left-hand edge of your mat. Right, and in this deer pose, initially, the goal is we want to stack the joints as much as we can. You'll see my body wants to cant off to the side, so I'm going to place a support under my right hand to keep the maximum weight pressing the hips down. And notice lateral rotation in your right hip, medial rotation in your left hip. And the second action, the second part of this movement that I'm going to offer today is going to address the other soft tissue, one of the other big soft tissue culprits, the quadratus lumborum. Right, so this is a deep abdominal, it's a deep core muscle, and it's a postural muscle. It helps us to stand erect. And it inserts at the 12th rib, so at the bottom of the rib cage. Has a loose association with the diaphragm. I'll tell you what it does for the diaphragm here in a few minutes. But then it connects down to the iliac crest at the top of the hips, the top of the pelvis, rather. And what tends to happen is it gets really clamped and over-engaged on one side and a little less engaged on the second side. And the body doesn't really care for that asymmetry very much. So it can be pretty debilitating pain. Now, how does it get locked up like that? It can be lots of different things, right? So I'm going to tell you some physical ways that happens, but I'll also tell you like some emotional components that I think are pretty significant. So sleeping on the side, not necessarily bad. From a physical therapist standpoint, a physiology standpoint, and body mechanics, we should probably have a pillow between our knees when we sleep on our side. But most of us, myself included, don't, right? So if we sleep on one side and don't balance it out by sleeping on the other, the hip gets lifted up and it shortens that QL on one side. All right, friends, check in with your body. You could stay right here the whole time. Or if you want to get into the QL, all right, so there's a bolster staged off by my right hip. Walk your hands over to the right. Start to lower your torso down, come to rest on your bolster. Now for you, if you've got more space and your body wants more, you can remove the bolster and fold all the way down to the earth. But notice that gentle tugging and twisting in the QL is kind of in opposite directions in the shape, and we'll balance it out when we get to the other side. Right, so movements like sleeping on one side and not the other can throw the QL out of balance. If somebody's sitting and they're sitting kind of slouched and slumped off to one side and they do that consistently, same thing. When I think about other things, what kind of jobs do people have, or even things that they do at home, that we do at home that like put a lot more pressure and torque on one side than the other. So I was a state police officer for 9 years. I wore a duty belt. All of the heavy ass tactical gear was on the right side of my duty belt. All the lighter administrative tools were on the left. And I wore that duty belt for 10 or 12-hour shifts, 5 or 6 days a week for years, right? And at the same time had pretty significant QL-related low back pain. But the other issue with QL is, from a standpoint of traditional Chinese medicine, the secondary channels of large intestine meridian are associated with the QL. Right? And large intestine meridian is one of the 2 water element meridians. The water element is associated with the quality of letting go and the acquired emotion of grief. So I believe that the people that have unresolved, unexpressed grief, who struggle to let things go, sometimes that can express as an overengaged QL on one side and pretty terrible back pain from that.
right? If you think about the two metal element meridians, lung and large intestine, it makes sense that letting go, right? So because of the association of the QL with the 12th rib and the diaphragm, it has a minor role in inhalation. Right, so I forgot to say, when the QL gets really tight, not only do we have really bad back pain, but it can be hard to breathe. Right, so an exhalation is an act of letting go each and every time. And so is a healthy and productive bowel movement, right? So associated with the large intestine. So I went through a difficult period in my life, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I was going to a chiropractor a lot for low back, which I didn't understand at the time, but was QL. And part of it was a duty belt. I'm sure part of it was sleeping on my side. But I also think, looking back at that time period in my life, I had a lot of unexpressed emotion, particularly grief. And there was a lot of stuff I was holding on to and choosing not to let go of. I think all of that stuff contributed. Just to walk your hands back up, and your hands under your shoulders. Draw that left knee forward towards your right heel, and then grab 2 blocks, come onto your right side into a right forearm plank. So float your right shoulder over your right elbow. Here's another thing with where we're going. What I'm going to cue you to do here in a moment is to step your left leg forward past the top edge of your mat, and then to fold down into the right shoulder. But one thing that I've discovered, that act of folding down, it lengthens out the QL. It can feel really good in the back and terrible in the shoulder. So if that's you, take your blocks, prop them up. And this is going to be based on the height of your body, so you'll have to play with this. But for me, that's 1 block at the lowest height, 1 block on the medium height, right under the armpit. Now I can slump down into the shoulder, and there's no pressure on my shoulder. A little bit of release actually on the subscapularis underneath. And then the left hand, you can do anything you want. It can stay on the hip, you can let it come in front of your torso, you can drop it behind your lower back. So to get some relief from the QL and QL related back pain, and eventually correct the movement patterns that maybe are hurting us, is like almost any side bending stretch is going to make a difference. So side bend from standing. We did that banana asana. We made that banana shape when we started our practice. That twisted deer that we did a moment ago here in the spallen sphinx. All of those, you can feel that sense of lengthening along the side of the body. So the inferior capsule in the armpit, serratus anterior, right at the top of the rib cage, and certainly the QL all get stretched out here. And I'm going to give you an option for adding some sensation here in a moment if you choose to do so. So once again, staying right here the whole time, it would be meaningful, productive work. Only if you've opened up some space and your body wants more. Bring your left hand down to the mat between your torso and the left edge of your mat. Apply enough pressure on that left hand that you can slide your right forearm forward. Come onto your right shoulder. Take your left hand to the center of your rib cage, and then start full on the left hand side, that is, and start folding your left shoulder back down to the earth behind you. Right, so my left shoulder, just based on the mobility in my torso and my shoulder, is probably floating 4 or 5 inches off of the earth. Right, so I'm going to keep my left hand on my left rib cage. But if your left shoulder comes all the way down to the mat or close, you could choose to lengthen that left arm out long. That will add a little bit of sensation here.
All right, friends, if you lengthen your left arm out long, bring it back to your left rib cage. Lift your left shoulder up, float it over your right. Step your left leg back over your right, and then hands under your shoulders. Press yourself up, and we're going to set up for our deer pose on the other side. So bring your left shin parallel to the top edge of your mat. Set your left hip on the earth. A big, generous bend in your right knee, so your whole right shin is parallel to the earth. Stage your bolster next to your left hip. Maybe grab a block to put up under that left hand as well. Right, so with these unresolved, unexpressed emotions, whether it's fear in the case of the psoas, or grief, or not letting go of something that our soul really wants us to let go of in the case of the QL, it's tough. It's tough. One of the things that I'm finding is really trying to check in and really notice and be honest with myself about what is it that I'm feeling right now. So my day yesterday, for example, I went to meet a childhood friend at the Houston Arboretum, and I was on my way. The map function said when I left the house, I was supposed to meet him at the Arboretum at 1. The map function said it was going to take me 35 minutes. So I was supposed to arrive at like 1:01. So I'd be 1 minute late. Which is not perfect, but I can work with that. And then the map function kept changing, and like I ended up getting there 40 minutes late. There was a terrible wreck on I-610, so I hope everyone was okay there. But just to notice the irritation boil up in me. And then last night, I was back on 610. I had an errand to do in Houston, and the traffic was terrible going to this concert venue. Everybody was going to see this concert last night at Reliant. And I planned on having an evening at home to get a little bit of work done. And I had all these things I was planning on doing. And my irritation kept getting more and more, and all these other things kept coming up. And I thought it was just anger. Okay, but before we go there, friends, check in with your body. You could stay right here. You could walk your hands off to the left, and then fold your torso down onto the bolster, just like the other side. Right, so some irritation. I mean, that's just human. I don't think that's bad. But it turns out, like I was really struggling with this. I was like, what am I going to do with this? And then I really checked in and realized there was a lot less of a component of anger and irritation than I thought. It was like, what am I really feeling? What I was feeling was disappointment. My evening didn't go in exactly the way that I'd hoped. I had some things that I'd want to get done for work that I wasn't able to get done last night. And just acknowledging that and going, isn't that interesting? This isn't so much anger. I'm feeling really disappointed right now. And me being able to acknowledge and express that in myself, drop into my body and feel where I was feeling that. That in itself helped me to let some of that go. And I went to bed last night really at peace. But this is new for me, friends. So all on a fairly experimental basis. We come to yoga like wanting to be more flexible or stronger or lose weight or whatever it is that we come to yoga for. And then what I feel like I see happen in me and in other people is if we stick with it, it's like the effect of water on rock. At first, it seems like the rock is a much more durable surface, but the water is so persistent and it constantly flows. So the hard edges get worn off of the stone surfaces. And I feel like our yoga practice will do that for us too. And if we're open to it, like I feel like it's helped me refine what I'm feeling, what the impacts are. So it's not just the stuff in my body, like is my QL over engaged on one side, but am I being dishonest with myself about the emotion that I'm feeling? And if so, trying to dig into why. What's the reason for that? front. Start to walk your hands back up under your shoulders and slide the bolster out of the way. Draw your right knee forward towards your left heel. Find your forearm plank on your left side. And then step your left foot forward toward the top edge of your mat and either slump down, fold down into that left shoulder, or place blocks to support up under that left armpit. But remember, the goal here is length. So anything that you can do to create more space from the top of the left armpit down to your left hip, here in this shape is money. Right, if you've created some space and you like to add an element of twist to your QL, bring your right hand down to your mat between your torso and the left hand edge of your mat. Slide your left forearm forward. Bring your right hand to your right rib cage. Start drawing your right shoulder back down toward the earth behind you. If you lengthen your right arm long behind you, bring your right hand back to your right rib cage. Lift your right shoulder up, float it over your left. Step your right leg back over your left. And then make your way out to your back. Grab both blocks. In the last shape before our final resting shape is going to be a restorative bridge. So place the soles of your feet on the mat with a generous bend in your knees, feet more or less hip distance apart. And then press down into your seat. Place one block under your sacrum. And then from here, just check in. So one block at the lowest height for now. And if you've got more space already, as I do here, lift up, place a second block at the lowest height right on top of the first. Right, so it's not wrong to do this with one block at the highest height. I find with two stacked like this, I have a lot more surface area and support. And then feel for length along the front plane of your body. I'm going to reach my arms up over my head, but you can do anything that you like with your arms. And check into, notice sometimes here we get some crunching in the back of the neck. If you're getting crunching in the back of your neck, pick the back of your head up, walk the crown of your head further away from your seat, and then gently set the back of your head down again. All right, friends, in a moment, we're going to begin our transition to our final resting shape. Before you do that, I'd just like you to check in with your body and just to ask her, what is it that she wants from your final resting shape? Right, so anything on your seat, your belly, your back, or your side. If you want something that supports the work that we did today, a couple of options. One is that constructive rest position that we started with the soles of your feet on the mat out nice and wide, knees coming into center. I'm going to choose a blocked bridge. So from this restorative bridge position, supported bridge position, I'm just going to lengthen my legs out long. But this is a fairly high sensation final resting shape for lots of different people. This may not be a good fit for everyone, or it may not be a good fit with two blocks. Maybe one block would be a better fit.
Choose the final resting shape that is supportive of what your body's asking for.
Swallow 2 or 3 times, and then start to draw some deeper breaths. Bigger in your belly, bigger in your chest on each inhale, and more full and complete on each exhale, letting go completely each exhale. And if your body's calling for movement, maybe start small with actions like wiggling your fingers or wiggling your toes. And then if your body wants more, go bigger in that movement. Rotate your hands at the wrists, your feet at the ankles. Drop your knees from side to side. Take a full body stretch, whatever would feel good. And if you're closing out the practice in your final resting shape, you're already home, friends. Stay right there. But otherwise, roll over onto either side. Find a fetal position. Take 3 or 4 breaths. Check in, notice how you're feeling. In particular, notice if you created some openness and space in your lower back. And then press yourself up into a seated position, any seated position. You can do anything you like with your eyes. You can do anything you like with your hands. Thank you, friends, for moving and breathing with me this morning. I appreciate your energy, your breath, and your practice more than you know. If you're inclined and moved to do so, draw your thumbs to the space between your eyebrows, your Ajna chakra. Blessings to you and your family. And that concludes our practice for this morning. Great job, friends. And once again, friends, I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. Thank you for joining us for our Sunrise Yin Lumbar Spine sequence, and I hope you have an amazing day today.